Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hope. My name is Tammy Lynn Connors, and this is Helping Other People Evolve. Today, I have a beautiful friend on here that I just met recently. Her name is Dr. Marci Batiste. How are you today?
I am so good. I'm excited to be on here, and I love the name of your podcast and the direction that you're taking. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to hear your story. I know we've chatted a little bit about it. So, just to let everybody know what my vision and mission is with Hope, it is just to help other people that are going through struggles to know that they can get to a strength. I feel like in this world, so many people sit in their house, lay in their bed, don't want to go outside because they feel like they're struggling alone. And unfortunately, a lot of people went through struggles, but fortunately, they have stories of hope that they can share with others. And I am just blessed and honored when people are actually able to share their story and willing to share their story just to help another person. So I had spoke to our friend Glenn, and he put us in a group chat, Marci, right? And said, "Hey, I think Marci would be a great story of hope." And then we chatted, and here we are. And I'm always like, God always like throws people into my world that can offer hope to others. So I'm excited. We actually live pretty close to each other here in Arizona.
Right.
Yeah. But you're originally from Chicago area, correct?
No, I'm actually from Iowa. So I actually met Glenn when I published my first book. He got wind of it, and he said to me, uh, I can't even remember if he'd read the whole book or whatever, but he was just like, "I want to publish your second book," and I'm like, "Second book? I barely got one out." So,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the beginning. That was about 10 or 12 years ago now. So,
Okay. Awesome. Now, how many books do you have out now?
I have 10 published, one in final edits, and two in process. So
Wow.
we're
Awesome.
cranking.
That's awesome. And you also have a podcast,
I
correct?
do. I do. It's called V2V, which stands for Voiceless to Victorious, and much in alignment. And like I said, I think that's what Glenn saw in the two of us was, I always say there's power after the pain, and for me, it was a long time for me to discover my voice, and so I always let other people speak for me, and I let things happen around me. And it took me a while to find my voice. And so now I say America's Voice for the Voiceless because I think somebody has to tell the stories. And that's what I love so much about what you're doing is you're giving people a platform to be able to tell the stories. And I think for people who listen, they, it's helpful sometimes just to know that you're not the only one. Sometimes we feel like we're in our box and nobody's going to understand, or we're weird, or we're weak, or we're broken, or all these these tracks that we tell ourselves, and that's not the case at all. We're just not being exposed to other people that have gone through things. So this is a great platform.
Awesome. So that's exactly why I've done this. So if you want to share a little bit, I know that you've had a few struggles that you've went through. So if you just want to share, kind of the struggles that you've been through, but what has gotten you to be able to get to a strength where you're at writing books and having a podcast and smiling and living life.
Yeah, the video keeps hanging up, so I apologize if it was a delay in my response. But yeah, I don't think we have enough time to talk about all my struggles.
Well, we
um,
can do more podcasts.
right. But I think that one of the things I say I'm a domestic violence champion, right? And for me, from my perspective, there are victims of domestic violence, which, in my opinion, are the people who don't make it out. They're forever silenced. They're killed in the process, right? And then you have what I call the warriors. Those are the people that are continuing in the fight. They're still in abusive relationships. They're still struggling with the throes of abuse. And then you have the champions. And to me, that's when you get on the other side of it and you have done your work, you've done your heart work, you've done your healing work, and now you're in a position and you're able to tell your story from a place of inspiration and being able to help somebody else. I say that survival is a responsibility. And I feel that very strongly for myself. I don't think that it's everybody's responsibility necessarily, but I definitely do feel like for me, when it happened to me, I remember I was in the process. He was holding me hostage and, beating me. And I just remember asking God at the time, like, if you if you make him stop, if you let me get out of here, I won't waste the time that you give me. And so to me, that sort of was, because I still to this day don't know how I got out, and I'll backtrack and bring us, into that moment. But um, for that purpose, I feel like it's been my obligation to share the story. You gave me a voice, you've given me platforms, you've given me, ample opportunities and so forth to be able to help someone else and to share with other people. And so for me, that's what I mean when I say survival is a responsibility. Like, I'm obligated because I made that commitment to God in the process. So that's kind of where we are now. But how we got here was, like everybody, I don't think anybody grows up struggle free. I don't think even, when you have children that are raised in affluence and things like that, everybody has their own set of struggles. And so I tell survivors, don't compare abuses, don't compare struggles. What may destroy me may not even phase you. It might be just something where you're like, that wasn't really that big of a deal in comparison, right?
Right.
Um, but for me, so I grew up in an abusive household. Where do I start with all this? So my stepfather abused my mom every Friday like clockwork. Um, and so it would go like this on it was back in the day. We didn't do the direct deposit things. People were still getting paper checks. I'm aging myself, but um, so my mom would go to the bank, cash her paycheck, deposit part of it, and then there was a little taco place across the street from there, and so I would get tacos, and then my stepdad liked Kentucky Fried Chicken, and so we would leave the taco place, go get the Kentucky Fried Chicken, go home. Everything was fine. Everybody would have dinner. After dinner, he would leave and go out and he would drink. And when he came home, my mom became a punching bag for him. Now, you know, as a 6, 7 year old girl, you don't really know what's going on in the other room, right? But you can hear
Yes.
abuse. You can hear the smacks, you can hear the name calling, you can hear the crying. And I used to kind of hide in my closet all the way at the back. And I was just like, I was afraid if I came out that it would happen to me.
Mhm.
Um, but I never understood really what was going on. And back then, they didn't really call it domestic violence. It didn't really have a name. If anything, people said things like knock her upside her head or get your woman in check or um, things like that. And so there was no social stigma to it. It was just that's how life is and what happens in this house stays in this house. And, I was reading something earlier today and it said that we have to stop asking children to why they didn't ask for help, because when you're raised in that environment, that's your normal. If you don't know there's another normal out there, you would never know to sound the alarm. You
Right.
wouldn't know to ask for help. You think this is how everybody's house is, this is how life is. um And so, there was never a conversation around it. Went on for 6 or 7 years. When I was 13, I tried to intervene, and he almost hit me with a vacuum cleaner.
Oh,
And
geez.
for me, right, and for me, that was my sort of, yeah, can't do this. So I ran away from home. Um, and told my mom I wasn't coming back until he was out of the house. And I remember having a conversation with her during the time that I was gone. And, she's begging me to come home. Please come back. I'll make him leave. And I'm like, but I'm not coming until he's gone. Like, if you want to live that way, that's your choice. That's not what I'm choosing for me. And I remember thinking about her like, you're weak. You are, you break promises to me, because she would say that, we were going to leave and we never did. And she would keep going back. But one thing that she said to me was that she didn't know if she could financially handle the household. So at 13, the track that I recorded said that if you're financially able to take care of yourself, oh, you can, ain't gonna happen.
Right.
Like, you're safe. That's like, money was the master key to preventing that life.
Mhm.
The things we think when we're children, like, we don't understand the full perspective, right? Um, and so in that moment, I said, you know what? I will always be able to financially take care of myself. I will never rely on a man to do it. Um, I will never find myself in that predicament.
Mhm.
So we fast forward. I end up going back home. She made him leave after a couple months. I go back home, and things were just different between us. Um, I still didn't trust the fact that it took her a period of time for her to make him leave. To me, in my mind, the track that I recorded was that you chose him over me.
Mhm.
Um, and that didn't feel good. But again, I'm thinking money is my answer. Financial security is the master key. So I did everything that I could to be financially stable. Um, Ended up having a very successful career as a bank executive. The whole six-figure earning thing. Um, I did the when I got pregnant with my daughter, I married her dad because I didn't want that single mom thing. I didn't want all of the things that happened to me. I was molested when I was 12. I, got pregnant the very first time I had sex. Ended up having an abortion because I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about it. Um, and all of those things started layering one on top of the other, and I started making decisions from the perspective of that 7-year old and that 13-year old.
Yes.
So, whatever tracks and whatever level of understanding they had, that's what I applied to my choices. And I stayed married to my daughter's dad for, we were together for about 18 years. Until I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, I was so miserable. I never wanted to get married to begin with, but I did it because I felt like I needed to create an environment of stability to prevent all the things that I had been through from happening to my daughters.
Right.
So, um, once I finally got divorced, I was like, oh, my kids are teenagers, can kind of start having a life. I'm making good money, everything's great. And, but I hadn't dated.
Mhm.
Like, I met him when I was 17 after I had a disastrous relationship, got pregnant, had the abortion, then I met him.
Right.
And he was the opposite. So I'm like, I'm going for stability. Um, but I'm not, we're just different people, you know? I'm introverted, but I'm outgoing. I'm assertive. I'm ambitious. I'm all these things that he wasn't.
Mhm.
So it was just not it wasn't a good fit. And I thought I could sell out to it because I needed my daughters to have a stable environment.
Right. Right.
But long story short, um, I just start dating, but I'm ill equipped to date. I
Mhm.
don't know how to date. Like,
Mhm.
I had two boyfriends and then I got married.
Right.
Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing out here.
What do we do? Our stories
Right.
relate so much you don't even know. But
Right.
continue.
And so then to compound it, because I was in the unhappy marriage, I had turned to food sort of as a comfort.
Mhm.
And so I ended up gaining a bunch of weight. I was at my highest point, close to 400 pounds. I was like 386 officially at the weigh in. Um, and I had to fix that. Um, and so I started exercising and cutting out carbohydrates. And so I did it all naturally and lost the weight. But in that weight loss process, a couple of things happened. One was I was now divorced and people were finding me attractive,
Mhm.
but I was 400 pounds like a year before that. I didn't even know how to be attractive.
Right.
I didn't know how to receive that attention. And
Mhm.
more importantly, I didn't know how to set up boundaries around it.
Mm.
So I had what I call, if you like me, I like you syndrome.
Mhm.
So basically, if they were attracted to me, I'm like, hey, let's go,
Right. Yep.
let's do this. And you can't build relationships that way.
No. No, not at all.
It's never gonna end well. Um, I never questioned the whys. I never questioned. I just was so enamored by the attention.
Mhm.
And um, so I went through a series of really bad dating experiences. Um, then when I moved here to Arizona, I think I was here maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I meet this guy who turned out to be the definition of narcissist.
Mm.
We were together for about 3 years, and any inkling of self esteem that I had when I entered that, I left with none of it.
Yes.
So even though I had lost 200 pounds, I'd gone from like a size 26, 28 down to like a 10. Um, physically, appearance wise, I was the best I'd ever been.
Right.
But mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I was still that 400-pound woman. I was making decisions from her experience,
Mhm.
the 7-year old's experience, the 13-year old's experience, and the 17-year-old that had an abortion.
Mm.
And those girls didn't know who I was.
Right.
So they're making decisions that they would have made, but it's in my life and my experience at that time. And it was just a really bad mix. And so when I got out of that relationship, I finally broke up with him, made a move out of my house, and I was single for about 3 weeks. And I met the next guy.
Mhm.
The next guy, girl, he was exciting. He was charismatic. He was fun. The chemistry was off the charts. The sex was amazing. The excitement level, like everything was on 10. We're hosting parties. We're having friends around us. Um, it was the highest of highs, right?
Mhm.
Um, but he was married.
Oh.
Right. Oh.
Yeah, that's a big oh.
Oh, right. And and I share this stuff very transparently, and we're laughing about it. It's not a serious, it's not a funny subject,
Right.
but I share it so openly and somewhat casually because we're all out there experiencing life how we experience life, and this was my experience. Um, but we had an amazing time. He was with me virtually every single day for close to 2 years. And it was so fun. And it was so the opposite because had come out of a relationship for 3 years where I was nothing.
Right.
Nothing I did was right. Nothing I did was good enough. Um, and here I was with this guy that I'm having so much fun. I'm completely attracted to, and he thinks I am the stuff.
Right. You're the queen's bee, right?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. What do they say? That all that in a bag of chips, right?
Right, right.
um, and so it felt so good that even though he was married, it didn't matter to me. I told myself, well, if it's not me, it'd be somebody.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not responsible for
What he's
how
doing.
she
Right.
feels and what
Right.
he's doing and all that. Because, of course, eventually she found out.
Right.
She was devastated. Um, and she made, she called me and I said, you got to talk to him. Like, I didn't marry you, basically, was my attitude.
Mm.
Um, and again, I say this stuff not from a place that I'm proud of,
Right.
but to share, like, we get in these toxic mindsets and these toxic circumstances, and because it's feeding something that we desperately need,
Mhm.
we're willing to sacrifice, we're willing to compromise, we're willing to acquiesce and capitulate and do all of these things just so we can keep having that thing
Yes.
and keep getting that good feeling. And, you know, it felt so good that when the red flags started popping up, I made excuses for him.
Mhm.
We were out one night and he got jealous because I was talking to a men's room attendant. And the conversation really was because why doesn't the women's room have an attendant but the men's do?
Right.
It wasn't, anything substantial. And the guy was selling lollipops, two for $1. Um, they were like the Tootsie Pops with the Tootsie Roll in the middle and little
Yeah.
funky round ones,
Yeah.
two for $1. And I was excited about these lollies, but I'm a happy little drunk, like I'm just having a good time.
Right.
And so we're talking, and I had went to the bathroom because it was time for us to go. And so I said, let me go to the bathroom, I'll come back and I'll pay the bill. Drop a pin in that. I'll pay the bill.
I heard that. I heard
Okay.
that.
All
Heard
right.
that.
So, so I go to the ladies' room, get distracted on my way back with the men's room attendant. We're talking. He's like, "Hey, you're not from here, are you?" And I was like, "No, I'm originally from Iowa." And you know how you can just feel somebody looking at you?
Mhm.
And so I start having this feeling and I turn around and he's like right behind me.
Mhm.
And he was like, I said, I'm ready to go. And he kind of grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the conversation. We go to leave, and he's just irate. And I'm like, what the hell is your problem? Like, I bought lollies. Like, you should be happy we got lollipops, you know?
Right.
And he's like, when I tell you I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. And da 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 da. And he's at this point now dragging me kind of out of the casino, down the escalators, away from the club. And by the time we get to the main lobby, he has now snatched the lolly out of my mouth. And then he yanks me so that I'm facing him. And he was like, this is what you want. And he smacks me in the face with it.
Oh.
Yeah. And hit my teeth so hard. Like I thought it actually chipped my tooth, which it didn't. But I'm like, what is, and so we get into this big argument. Our friends that are with us are like, what is going on?
Right. Right.
And that was the beginning of me making excuses
Mm.
for the abuse.
Mhm.
Um, oh, we were drinking. Oh, he's just jealous. Oh, he really likes me. Oh, he wants me for himself.
Mhm.
Like, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't.
Oh,
done
yeah.
X. I
Yeah.
shouldn't have been talking to that men's room attendant. Um, I need to do better.
Mhm.
I need to change things. Um, and then there was he wanted us to kind of match our attire when we would go out. And there was one night when I had told him the day before what I was wearing, and so he showed up. I said I was going to wear a red dress, and he shows up in a red shirt. And I came downstairs and I've got on like teal or something, a little sundress. Where's the red dress? I was like, oh, it's going to be hot. So I didn't, I just put this on and say like it's going to be cooler. Where's the red dress, Marcy? I told you it's hot. So this is cooler. So I put this on. I asked you, where's the red dress? I was like, for Pete's sake, do you want me to put on? You know what? Never mind. I go upstairs, put on the red dress, come back down. Everything's fine. Again, well, we didn't, that, it was my fault. Like I told him the day before,
Mhm.
like,
Shouldn't have changed my mind. I should have just went with what I said, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so again, I make excuses. Um, Long story short, there were a few more incidences that each time that they popped up, I would make excuses and I would take ownership of the outcomes.
Mhm.
Abusing someone is your choice. It's not the person who's being abused fault that you make the choice that you make. But oftentimes as survivors and warriors, we find ourselves taking ownership of their choices,
Mhm.
and to the point that we don't even think for ourselves that we have another choice, that we don't have to stay in it, we don't have to deal with these behaviors, we don't have to, put up with the things that we're putting up with. So long story even longer. um we get to April 17th, 2012. We had been together just under 2 years at that point. He's still married. At this point, he had been going back and forth between her house and my house because she'd get sick of his crap, and then he'd come with me, and I was sick of his crap. Like I never want, I don't want to be your primary because you always have a secondary.
Right.
I
Right.
don't want to replace her. I don't want you to leave her. I just want to have fun.
Right. Right.
So, um, he gets jealous because I think I may have to go out of town. Don't know for sure. But he's convinced that I'm going to go see an ex, that even though I may have a business trip there, that I have these clandestine plans.
Mhm.
Started talking himself into a rage, to the point where I was like, you know what, we're not going out tonight. I think we just need to call it. But in the conversation in the car, something struck me that it was different this time. And I'm like, well, mind you, he had hit me a couple other times leading up to this. Like I said, I had made excuses for those times. Um, but I was like, if I don't get out of the car with him, like he's really gonna hit me.
Right.
And so I like if I can get home, pull my car, like I'm planning this in my head as he's screaming and yelling and calling me all kinds of names. And I'm like, if I can get home, pull my car in the garage, my driver's side is on the side of the house, I can get in the house before he can get around the car.
Right.
Plan works out perfectly. Get in the house, lock the door, shut the door to the laundry room, and I just hear this banging on the door. And I'm like, I'm not going to let him in.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I hear wood start to crack. And then I hear the door just fall.
Oh.
And he had kicked in my door.
Oh.
So yeah. So he gets in the house, and this is in a matter of minutes.
Mhm.
I'd say no more than 3 minutes had passed from the time I made it into the house and he's kicking the door in. Um, I still have my purse in my hands, like everything. Like I was just kind of stunned. So then he gets in the house, and immediately just starts wailing on me. Pummels me to the floor, smashing my face against the tiles. Um, and so this goes on for several hours. In between the punches in my face and my back, and he's got his knee I'm face down, but he's got his knee sort of pinned in my back. Um, and the whole time he's saying, I love you. I told you you would always be my girl. I told you that you'd never leave me. I told you we'd always be together. I love you. And I'm like, what kind of, like, what is happening? Like, I'm mind blown because what I remembered from when men hit women, they don't say that.
Right.
They call you disgusting names. And so I'm just like, I can't even frame it from what I saw my mom go through because this doesn't look like that.
Right. At all.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Um, and so it was in that moment, like I said, where I was just like, I had gotten free a couple of times and made it to the door, but I could never make it out.
Mm.
And then every time he dragged me back in, and um, in the midst of this, I'm also considering that 3 weeks before that, his first cousin and his best friend had stabbed his pregnant girlfriend 62 times in a
Oh.
hotel room while they were on vacation and murdered her.
Oh.
I'm like, this crap is genetic. Like,
Right.
and so that's when I just was like, I'm probably going to die here.
Mm.
And I was like, if God, if you get me out of here, I'll do right.
Mm.
I'll make use of the time that you give me back.
Mhm.
And to this day, I couldn't tell you, Tammy, how I got out.
Wow.
Like, my arm was all bruised up because every time I would get to the door, he would slam the door back, on my arm and drag me back in the house. And I don't know that final time. Like, I don't even remember. I don't even remember the door opening more than like this much.
Mhm.
I can't fit through that. Like, I literally don't know how I got out. And so I say, like, that was God saying, all right,
Mhm.
I got an assignment for you.
Mhm.
In fact, you've always had this assignment, and all of these things have been training grounds for your empathy. They've been training grounds for your communication. They've been training grounds for you to serve.
Yes.
But, what I realized through all of it, and especially the domestic violence, because I grew up in Iowa and my mother had a very black and white perspective on life.
Mhm.
Things are good or they're bad, they're right or they're wrong, they're proper or improper.
Right.
Life is a very gray place.
Yes, for sure.
Very seldom are you on the black or the white side. You're usually somewhere in the gray area.
Mhm.
And my experiences taught me to navigate the gray spaces
Mhm.
and understand that, you know, everybody is doing the best they can in the moment with the
Mhm.
information that they have, with the tools that they have, with the influence that they have. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to go wreak havoc on somebody's life.
Right.
Like, and that was the biggest piece for me for forgiveness with him, was that was within him.
Mhm.
It had nothing to do with me. it impacted me certainly, but it had nothing to do with me. It was a choice that he made. Um, but being able to take that information and translate that into um, information to help myself. Um, and so when I got out of that relationship, it was the day that that happened. Um, when I finally got out, I called my best friend and I was just like, hey, we're not going to go out tonight because we were supposed to go on a double date. That's where we were on our way to when this all started. And she was like, oh, okay, why? And she's like, wait, are you crying?
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, he just beat me. She was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I got out, but he's leaving now. And as he backed out of the driveway, I'm on the phone and he left, I think, because he thought I was on the phone with the police.
With the
But
police, right?
I was so out of it. Calling the police wasn't even like I called my friends. And when he backed out of the driveway, he said, if anything ever happens to me, if anything happens to my family, if the police come to my house, if I go to jail, when I get out, I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill you.
Wow.
I was like, noted.
Right. Right.
Like, I have no reason not to believe that. Your cousin just murdered his girlfriend, so hell, why not? You know? Um, but when I was standing, so I go, she says, come over here right now. So I come over to her place and she's trying to get me to call the police. And I'm like, no, because he's going to come back and he's going to kill me.
Right. Right.
Um, I'm like, I can't call the police. That's not, it's not an option. Um, and she was an herbalist. And so she's putting salves on me and things like that to try and keep the swelling to go down and reduce the bruising. And I was standing in her bathroom mirror and I was like, how did I get here? How did I become that girl? How did I become everything that I knew better? How did I how did I become my mom? Like I hated what she represented from that perspective. Like how is this me? How is this my life? Don't cry, Tammy.
Well, it's just that mirror talk. I mean, I've been there, so it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot.
And I knew in that moment, if I don't change me, I was the common denominator of all of the relationships. Every turn, every choice, everything was mine.
Mm-hmm.
And did I operate in response to experiences that I was having? Yes. But at the end of the day, did I make choices that resulted in the outcome that I was experiencing? Yes. I chose to minimize, I chose to mask, I chose to represent to the world that everything was everything and it was not any of those things. Um, so I was like, okay. The bad news is I'm a big part of the problem. The good news is I'm a big part of the problem.
Right, right. Yeah.
So if I'm the problem, I have control of me. And as long as I have control of me, then I can start fixing the problem. And so I took about a year and a half and I just dived into self help. I went to therapy. I got a counselor. I joined a support group for domestic violence survivors. Um, and I stopped dating. I stopped socializing. I stopped doing anything that even closely represented who I had been.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to become something different. And I have to learn to choose differently. And this was the game-changing moment for me. I was in I was in therapy, and I was talking to my therapist, and she was asking me about being in a relationship with a married man and how did I think that was going to end.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I never thought about how it was going to end. I thought about how great it felt while I was in it.
Yeah.
I thought about how all of our highs were so high. And I thought about um, the amazing sex and all of the laughs and the parties and, going to shows and taking trips and going on vacations and, all of the things that we did that, I tell survivors all the time, they're hard on themselves because they go back
Mhm.
or because they don't leave. And people are like, well, why would you stay? You need to just leave. Why would you put up with that? And it's because all times aren't bad times.
Right. Exactly.
And so we hold on to those good times.
That little bit of hope we hold on to because we see that, right? I don't mean to interrupt here, but
No,
I think that that's a big part of it. Is I've talked about this a lot because I've went through a lot of this myself, and it's like you remember that day that it was so great, even if it was only for an hour, but that 1 hour of greatness, and you can let 10 days of hell
right.
go because you hold on to that one day of greatness that you knew was there, and that you thrive on that, right? That's that little void like you were talking about earlier, like it was filling that,
Yeah.
so yeah. So go ahead, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, no,
that
you're
always
exactly right. And I
hits
even
home with me a lot.
it is, and it is that hope that you hold on to. And it's funny, like your podcast is called that, and you're bringing up hope because in my book, Love Miscarriage, I talk about hope as though hope is a person and how hope keeps us holding on to things
Mhm.
that we need to let go of because hope is always downloading the good. She's always like I said that heifer just sits on the porch and waits. That keeps you
Yeah.
connected to the BS. And but I liken it to childbirth and how childbirth is painful.
Mhm.
It's like the most horrific pain I think anybody can humanly experience. And for me,
Yes.
like I was in this whole holistic thing. And so when I have my kids, I'm like, I don't want no drugs. And so I
Yeah.
felt all of it.
Right.
But after you have that baby,
Yeah.
you kind of forget like
Yeah.
how horrific the experience of bringing that
You
life into the world was.
do.
Like there would never be second children if we remembered the pain from the first child.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right there.
And so domestic violence, like I said, I talk about this stuff kind of casually, but because it's such a heavy subject, we have to bring light to it. But that's what it's like. And so we hold on to all the times that were good times. We minimize all the times that were not such good times. And we make excuses for it because we've told everybody else that everything is everything and this is that and the relationship is great. But when I was talking to my therapist and she said, how did you think this was going to end?
Mhm.
And I said, I didn't. I only thought about how good it felt. And she said, so you're telling me basically that you sold your soul to feed your ego.
Oh,
Tears.
yeah.
I'm I was just like that hit me in such a visceral way, so deep down in my core. And I share this story often. And actually that's one of the books that I'm writing. I'm doing a book about that part of it.
Mhm.
Um, it hit me in such a way that I had no choice but to own my part.
Mm.
And fast forwarding with that same therapist, that part helped. But then she was like one of those people where that kind of feels like you just need to kind of be in this space of anger. And I'm like, no, I want to process and I want to move past anger. I don't want to linger in it. I don't want to get stuck there. Um, I'm all about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told her, because she was like, well, do you think, this was another session several weeks later, and she said, so do you think that, she said, you don't seem angry enough? Because I did the whole exercise, where you write the letter to the person.
Right.
And she's reading the letter and she's like, well, you don't seem angry enough. Like, what the hell? Like,
Right.
how do you measure that? Number one. But I was like, well, because I'm not really angry. And she's like, well, do you think you deserved it? I was like, I think I did some things that put me in position that I found myself in, but I don't think I deserved it. No. And she was like, well, you don't seem angry enough. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to tell you about anger and holding on to anger.
Mm-hmm.
It's already at this point, I don't know, 8 months after the fact, 9 months after the fact. And I'm sitting here in your office paying you to talk about my experience so that I can heal from it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to linger any longer than I have to inside of anger, because while I'm sitting here, or I'm sitting in anger, or I'm sitting in resentment or hatred or unforgiveness, he's out living his life.
Right. Exactly.
Like, this is not about me being angry. This is about my ability to forgive and heal.
Mm-hmm.
I have to forgive myself as much, if not more, than I forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, if I sat in anger and resentment and pity and woe is me, I can't do that. I can't heal. I can't heal from there, and one of my partners, she says, you can't, how does she say? You can't heal in the same place that hurt you.
Right.
And it's like, if you stay stuck in self-pity or anger or hatred or bitterness or resentment, you can't heal there. Those are the things that created the broken, unsettled space. You have to move outside of that. And so I told her, politely, that's our last session. But um, you know, it's all of those things and all of those pieces that, like you said, like, we have to create an environment for hope, because there are people who haven't yet got the tools.
Right.
And so the coaching and, my podcast and my books and my domestic violence work with 9 seconds, like, all of that is to give them tools. And when I started my DV org, I said to the team, I was like, I want to talk to the woman in the mirror that day.
Mm-hmm.
I want her to have all the things that I wish I had. I want her to have the information that nobody told me. I want her to have the support that I feel like nobody gave me. I want her to have um, a place where she can go and find resources. Like, there's lots of resources out there, but when you just had the crap beat out of you, sitting there trying to sort through it all, it's overwhelming. And I'm like, we have to bring the data together. We got to dig through it with our sane and sound minds to be able to provide that information to someone else. And so, that's really the mission I'm on, and changing the trajectory of domestic violence here in the state of Arizona is sort of our target. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of like you said, I feel like when you say yes when you discover what your purpose is and you say yes and you start walking in that purpose, then people come to you and things come into your life and you have an opportunity to do things that you never thought were possible.
Right. Right.
I think God gives you the tools once he understands that you're willing. You know, there's a scripture, and I'm not a theologian by any stretch, but that it talks about like he's not going to give you more until you manage what you have.
Right. That's
And
good.
I feel like that's how, you know, as we learn more and we grow and we heal and, you know, we start operating in a new space, we have to be good stewards of that information and we have to be willing to share it. So that's what I
Yeah,
do.
that's awesome. Now, what is your that's a nonprofit that you have then? Did you say it was called 9 Seconds?
Yeah. So it's 9seconds.org is the website. And it got its name because every 9 seconds, a woman is either abused or assaulted in this country. And so, you know, we constantly want to drive that home that, you know, for me, even um, in the environment that I had and that I grew up in, I had a visual in my mind of what somebody who's in an abusive relationship looks like. I had a, oh, that kind of girl, oh, that woman, that social status, that
Yeah.
class, that economics, that race, that, you know, oh, that's the trailer park crap over there. That's the hood stuff over there, you know, and we start trying to put these labels on it. And a big part of it for me was um, when I first started sharing my story and sharing, there's a YouTube video that I did maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know, it's been viewed well over 100,000 times now. It was to say, this is my story and this is my face, and to put a new perspective on what survivors look like because I didn't fit that stereotype that people have placed on DV. I was a six-figure earner. I was a bank executive. I had my own everything. I wasn't reliant on anybody to provide for me. I wasn't, but it didn't fix what was down on the inside of me.
Right. Right.
It just put a nice package on it. And so I wanted people to understand like you don't have to look a certain kind of way. Like domestic violence doesn't discriminate, abuse doesn't discriminate, sexual assault doesn't discriminate, human trafficking doesn't discriminate. You know, all these atrocities, particularly against women, that, you know, feminine, you know, genocides and, you know, all of these things that we're subjected to, and we think it always is somebody else, it's somebody else's problem. And I really wanted to just drive home the fact that no, it's the people that you least expect, the people that you think are strong, people that you think that have it all together, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they've been through. And so you
Yeah.
have to respect where people are. And it doesn't mean you have to tolerate bad behaviors or things like that, but understanding that, like we said at the very beginning, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, oh, let me go out there and make Tammy's life crap today.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You know, everybody wants a good life. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to give and receive love. You know, we genuinely want the same things. And it's a matter of figuring out with the information, tools, and resources I have, how do I make that happen?
Mm. Yeah. So good. This has been amazing today. I love when you talk about transparency, Trent Shelton, I follow him a lot, and he
Yeah,
a couple years ago he said a quote of my transparency will lead to someone else's transformation.
yeah,
And that really stuck with me because at that time I didn't really share my story that much either. I mean, people knew, but not a lot of it. And the more that I'm listening to other stories, other struggles that people unfortunately have went through, but the strength that they've had. And it's just that, we're sharing our transparency. So someone else out there can be like, oh my gosh, I'm going through that right now, or some type of struggle. And, if Marci got through it, then I can probably get
right,
through it. I just need to figure out the tools. And that's what I feel like this platform that I have and that you have is just to give people, like you said, the tools and the resources, and just to know that there are people out here that we really do care. There's so many people out here
right.
that really do care. So I appreciate this. Is there anything that you want to add before we wrap it up? We're going to do this again, just by the way, just so you know. I can't wait.
Anytime I have the opportunity to share, I am more than happy. to be able to do that and to support what people are doing. I think you're doing amazing work. If anybody wants to reach me, they can just go to 9seconds.org. There's a contact form there. They can find out more about the domestic violence work that we do. And then they can also follow the podcast. There's a link for the podcast on there. And there's, we just started the podcast. So there's, 4 or 5 episodes on there. We have another one starting tonight at 7:30. So definitely like just reach out. And for, anybody who's watching and is just questioning, like, can I really reach out? Do they really care? I always tell people that nobody does the work that you're doing. You're traveling the country, talking to people and listening to stories. People that run, shelters and service providers and, DV orgs and sexual assault orgs, nobody gets into this work because we don't care.
Right.
And so if you ever feel like, oh, my story's not, or my situation's not enough, if you feel like you wish you had somebody to talk to, know that you do. And it's just a matter of reaching out, and there will be a hand there waiting to pull you in and to support you.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Marci, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Everybody, I appreciate you all listening to Hope. This will be, of course, on the podcast and also on the YouTube channel. So I'm super excited, Marci, just to get to know you better. And I'm going to look into your nonprofit, because I definitely would like to be a part of all of that. So I'm definitely going to be talking to you about that some more. So I hope everybody has an amazing day, and thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.